Hi, welcome to this video, which is a stream of consciousness as I make this mouse cauldron magic pot ring holder. This video might be for you if you like to follow along as someone talks about their artistic process. There is a short video version of this project. I'll link it below. But this version is in real time, except where indicated, and it methodically looks at how I created this piece while I talk about what's going through my mind. At this point, as I'm rolling out my silver clay and using my 3-card thick slats to do so, I'm picturing about 80% clearly what it is I want to make. I know it will be a tiny cauldron with mice and plants, but I don't know which plants will be on it yet. As I roll this out, you can see a little air bubble become visible. In some cases, that would cause me to re-roll the whole slab, but I'm going to do so much work onto the walls of the cauldron, I know that's going to be covered eventually. As usual, when rolling out clay, I'm going to turn it a few times to make sure that I have an even roll in every direction. And I'm kind of testing here to feel what the drape is like. And this is exactly what I was hoping for. It feels a little bit leathery, very pliable. I have just decided by looking around my studio what prop I'm going to use to shape the cauldron. This is a bezel pusher, but it's the handle that I'm interested in. I was first imagining that this pot would have more of a handmade look to it, but I decided I want to give the finish a really organic look, and so I think that needs to be set on a very tidy, symmetrical pot. So in order to make this symmetrical, I need to use a drying form. So that's where this comes in. I treated it with cool slip so that the clay does not stick to the wood, which it might otherwise. So this is going to go about as you would imagine. First I'm going to shape it, and then I'll use an acrylic board to smooth those pleats down and blend the clay into itself. This isn't going to take care of this entirely, but this is a good start to making that form. There are probably 10 practical ways to make a shape like this in clay, but this is what makes sense to me. So I'm calling this the cake pop, and I'm going to dry it like this in cake pop shape, standing up. Only a partial dry so that I could bring it back a little pliable and then trim. I'm being very careful here because it's fragile. But cutting this clay off now allows me to save it earlier in the process before it's very dried. Less work will go into reconstituting it later. I let it air dry on the form, and then I can sand it a bit. These steps now are to get the rim of the bowl closer to even so that I can build upon it. I'm introducing water to help that rim be ready to receive the addition I'm going to give it. At this point, I'm really winging it. I'm following my intuition about how to build this up. And my next idea is a band of clay, like this. So now I do need to close the circle a little more than I have it now to have some control over it. But I'm not worrying too much about making that a solid joint, so heads up that this is not how to make a good joint. I'm anticipating smoothing this down onto the bowl and needing it to have some pliability, and so this circle is really just to help me get it placed. I want to join these two pieces really well, and migrating them together while both are still partly wet feels like the way to do that. This is for sure the part where I know it looks a mess, and I am going to trust myself. First here, I'm just making sure that that band of clay is stacked directly on top of the rim of the bowl. But stacking clay on itself does not make for a good joint, so I am going to have to actively integrate these into each other. I'm starting here from the outside. If I use my fingers too much in this process and forcibly press the top band onto the bowl, I'm going to distort the band, and it's as thick as I want it to be. I don't want it to be distorted, so that's why for the most part I'm using the silicone shaper. And here when I start using my hands, I'm just going with the clay, not really forcing it to do anything. This is a slow and steady approach. I am also slowly working the clay down into that rounded top cauldron shape, giving it shoulders instead of the straight sides of a mug. And once the clay is this wet, it needs to go dry, at least partially, which is what I've done here, so that I can continue to integrate these partially wet pieces now from the inside. Again, this is more of a slow massage, and I did get to the point where it was just too wet, too soft. I did have to completely dry the whole thing, and then I can work on it like this, beginning to do the refining steps. And now I can really see where I'm going with this. One of the first things that I had imagined doing for this piece was giving it claw feet, kind of like a clawfoot tub. I think that's such a cool example of playfulness where it's not a necessity. And that was part of my inspiration for this piece. And at this moment, I can picture them. I can imagine what size they're going to be, where they're going to go. I see it almost entirely clearly in my mind. I still just don't know what plants I'm going to put on this, but I think that will come literally as I do it. Getting the clay blended and smoothed is important, but water does so much to complete the sense of unity here. This is a really clean dust, so I'm going to put it right back into my paste. Now I am going to make the lid. I'm going to put Cool Slip on this ancient texture that I have, but that I love so much, and also on the silicone stamp. And then I'm going to roll this out. I find this part very meditative, but I'm going to speed it up because I don't think you need to see this in real time again. I am being exceptionally careful here to make sure that all of my slabs are even because I do not want the cauldron or the lid to warp in the kiln. I'm rolling in this texture to help the cauldron look aged. I don't want it to look shiny and new. Seeing if it fits as a lid. Marking my center and giving it this really cool stamp. Checking and checking to make sure I have it centered how I want it, because this particular stamp isn't centered on the handle, and that is something that can happen with stamps. Pressing it in, and then I get to see what I've done. Yep, that is looking good. Now I just need to figure out a size of lid that will be proportionate to the cauldron and have a nice overhang. I think this one will do it, but again, double check, triple check. I'm trying to envision this before I cut. Believe it or not, I put this at 5 times real speed. It still doesn't seem that fast, but I guess that's an indicator of how slow and steady parts of this work actually are. Marking out where my claw feet will go. The shape of this right now is really reminding me of a mushroom. Another note to those of you who have been using PMC for a long time, you know that that's a little PMC3 paste container I'm using, but I have refilled it with art clay silver paste. I just really don't like the art clay silver paste containers. They're harder to get stuff out of, so I've saved some of these and I reuse them. By the way, if you noticed, yes, I did have to take the original audio out of these videos because as I'm making this, my kids are in the playroom next to me where I can see them and they are playing Zelda and loudly talking about it. This is a trust the process moment. It seemed right to attach these and then sculpt them in place, which is what I'm about to do. I'm taking time to make sure that they're really connected here because it doesn't matter how cute you make something, if it's not attached, it's not attached. And often as you do a step like this, your clay will dry out, and that's okay because I'm going to go back and I will hydrate the top sides where I want to put in the claw detail, and then I'll work on them. Sometimes the fact that clay starts cracking as you manipulate it feels maybe defeating. It feels like this isn't working, but I just want you to know this is really normal. Here I'm pushing the feet down while they're still a little pliable so that the pot sits steady. I'm not worried about details at this point. I just need the form to be right. Water is so healing on this material. Water, water, water. Once again, because these got so dry as I was attaching them, I had to make them so wet so that I could do this to them. So now it looks like I'm cutting into paste. I basically am. Please enjoy some glove and snake rolling noises. Here's another moment where I think I know what I'm doing, and I've never done exactly this before, but my vision is to make a ring, attach this ring to the bottom side of the lid, and then shape it so that it's no longer a snake once it's in place. Steps are wet bottom side of lid, place down, hope I have it aligned properly, press it gently, don't want to smush it, check and find that it's not centered, adjust it, ideally without cracking it too much. Check fit. Fit is good. Fit is not snug, but fit is good. Here was a moment where all was quiet in the studio, so here's what it sounds like as I work on this again. And my mission here is basically, again, to merge these two pieces of clay into one piece. So I want them to be integrated visually, and I want them basically to be one piece of clay. It's fun to really be using this big silicone shaper more than I usually do because this scale of project is really so much bigger than what I'm usually doing, but I love that shaper. It's a cup-shaped silicone shaper in a size probably 5. I went back to look, it's actually a size 6. Now it's time to make one of the elements that I knew from the beginning I wanted to have on this, which is an acorn. Acorns are just such a sweet representation of food and home for cute little animals. I just love them. You can see again, that's the back of a size 6 shaper and the back of my X-Acto blade handle. And while that goes to dry, now I can work on the lid, which is itself now dry. A lot of alternating on and off the dryer starts to happen at this point. This here is a pretty satisfying process of guess and check, edit and check. And I can tell at this moment that it's going to fit, so I'm taking that as motivation to just keep trimming. You can see it's just a little larger, really close. And again, this is one of those parts of the process where I think there are probably a lot of ways to do this, but this is just what made sense to me. This is a moment where I'm thinking, this is exactly what I'm trying to do, but this does not look aesthetically pleasing. Maybe I will never show this part to anyone. But then it just so quickly moves on to this part that I think it's important to keep showing you that there are lots of really messy parts. And sometimes messy moments get you quickly exactly where you want to be, to the other side of messy. I want my connection between the two of these to be good, but you know I'm going to clean up every bit of paste that is out of place. I want that pattern to be totally preserved and beautiful. This is meeting my expectations. I'm really happy with it. And also the cap has brought it to the perfect weight. It feels really solid. So maybe this is the part you're here for. I put in a few things last night. Mouse, mushrooms, mouse, and continuing the acorn motif with some oak leaves. And the basic principle here is that the pot needs to be wet to absorb the paste. If it's too wet, it won't take on the paste. And I'm just going to add things that make sense to me, things that are cute, things that go together in the spirit of Mouse Cauldron, where important, tiny potion work will sometimes probably happen. I'm going to show you myself putting in this one complete mouse. That will be about the next 3 minutes, so you can make the choice to stay here for that or jump ahead. And then I'm going to show you how we put in parts of other mice and plants. Something I want to be really mindful of here is not mushing the paste that I've already laid down. I have done that before. I want to work on this while the paste is wet. I want to keep it wet while I'm working on it, but I have to be hyper aware of not rotating the pot in such a way that I smush what I've put down. I don't want to be too detailed with these, but I do want to give them a little muscular definition. So I'm going to build up on the arms and the legs. This is another place where I think I'm not sure what value you might take from watching me do this, but I think what I want to share about it is these are the kinds of slow, methodical work phases that often we see go by very quickly on social media, sometimes skipped altogether. And often projects are just too tedious that truly nobody wants to watch them, so that makes sense. But it's good to remember that a lot of art, including this piece here, take unseen amounts of time to complete. This piece took the better part of 4 days to create. And also, that's the cool thing about working in paste like this, is that as long as you keep it wet and workable, you can kind of keep crafting with it until you're happy with it. So it's a bit of a slippery medium, and you can see here that my approach is to put paste where I need it and then shape it. So it goes through these moments where it seems perhaps unclear if it's all going to work out. But it's ultimately, I think, fairly forgiving. And the fact that if you just keep it wet, keep it moving, and keep shaping it and adding onto it and subtracting from it, you can really use this technique in so many different applications. And that's pretty much where I'll leave this to dry, and then we'll move on to some other parts. Here's a third and last mouse. These two are having a meeting, of course, seemed right. I'm going to go back later and put in final touches for all of these, but right now I'm going to switch to putting in the Amanita muscaria, which is known for being quite toxic. And one of the fun challenges here is that the Amanita is also famously colorful, red with white spots. Silver is a monochromatic medium, and so I'm going to try to represent something famously colorful by texture instead of color. Here I'm putting in the collar or the annulus of the mushroom, and you can see here in the next shot it's already looking a little different. I put that in a few different times. Now I'm adding the white spots. I love dandelions. I love them in all of their phases, from magical puffball to yellow lion head. I'm no expert, but I think they're unfairly classified as weeds. They can improve soil health by aerating compacted soil, and they provide food for pollinators. I'm also that person who has made dandelion head fritters, and I love them. So that is why I put the dandelion on here. I did not realize until after I had completed this vessel that the dandelions are the only non-toxic plant here. Daffodils, mushrooms, even the acorns and less processed are toxic to humans. And I love that balance. Toxic plants plus one snack. Back here for a second attempt at detail, and now that the paste is dry, it's reacting a little differently. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm experiencing that. And this is what it looks like in the end as it's ready for fire. I'm so proud of it, and it feels really nice to hold, so I think it's going to feel that way when it's completed too. Textured but smooth, none of it sharp. These could theoretically be fired together like this, because if they're not attached now, they shouldn't be after firing, but I also feel more comfortable firing them this way separately, and so that is what I did in my kiln at 1650 Fahrenheit. That's the maximum recommended temperature, and for 2 hours, which is the maximum recommended time. And then it looked like this. This white or silver look is just unpolished silver because it's not reflecting light in the way we traditionally think of silver doing. We're looking at silver particles that each have their own reflective surface, not in plane with each other. Polishing silver is what makes it shiny because the light is being reflected in the same direction. I'm not going to polish this at all. I want to maintain the handmade organic look of the finish, which is a beautiful offering that the silver clay gives to silver. I am, however, going to tumble it to give it a bit of burnishing, and first I'm going to give it a patina with liver of sulfur. This is what it looks like in daylight. Pretty similar, but a little different. I also love it with this white silver look. It's a hard decision to patina it because it looks so pristine, but I'm quite sure this is the right thing to do. Hot water, liver of sulfur, submerge. And we are outside because these fumes can be toxic. When I first shared this, I really appreciated the amount of people who told me that they didn't think a tiny vessel needed to have a purpose, and I agree. This is a piece from the heart. I love looking at it. I love that it exists. I love the spirit and the power of it, and it could be a ring holder or it could just exist for its own sake. So if you're still here, thank you for watching. I appreciate you so much, and more to come.